I just want to say, and you and I have spoken about this many times. I mean, I can't even imagine families living in a hotel room for, it's nice to go on vacation and, even sometimes you put a little more in the room because you have 4 kids and
Sure.
they're too little to separate rooms or whatever, and you stay in one place. I can't imagine that. Especially can't imagine it during COVID, where you had people for, that length of time. It was difficult dealing with 4 grandchildren in my house, trying to do homeschooling every day in my house, let alone if you were in a 1-bedroom, 1 hotel room. And again, as Legislator Drucker said, I do believe this is much better for our families, the services they will get and whatever. Again, it's just, now you said the state has to come down, the state has to see what it's like, what the facility is like, is this agreeable, whatever. So obviously there was a process done for them. Unfortunately, that process for us as legislators, I knew nothing until there was a press conference, and I chair this committee. So when I start getting phone calls, and you kind of look like deer in the headlights, like, I don't know what you're talking about, then you're doing research, you're playing catch up, and it puts us all in a bad situation. Obviously, like I said, if the state had time to make sure this is a good place, this good facility, whatever there's going to have to be done. I know that in the MOU, it was a small amount difference, but it was $222.85 per room. And now it's a different price.
Yeah, because the state reviewed, Chai had made some amendments to the budget, and the state approved like $2 more or something.
So then you have to do...
It's $225.63.
And now you have to put a new...
We have to put that in. Yep.
MOU together, okay.
Yep.
And who pays that?
It's really state. The state that pays it. Essentially, again, it's a pass-through. So it's not on the county's dime. This is money that comes from the state to us. We pay the vendor. That's what we do.
When this project was going to take place and the site was and like you said, you don't choose a site, whatever,
right.
But did you reach out to the school district? Did you reach out to the municipality? Did you reach out? I know you didn't reach out to us.
Correct.
So
Correct.
Did you reach out to the local fire department, that now it's a different situation for them? Did all that happen?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that I had a meeting with the school superintendent, I think it was January. It was January. But that was like a meet and greet, right? So we kind of reached out to each other because I was new and he wanted to meet me. And also he knew that there had already been, because of the motels in the area, there were a couple of kids. I think there were 10 kids at the time in his school district. And we were talking about, so we met at my office, and we were talking about homeless children and what services Jericho could provide, et cetera, et cetera. And I mentioned to him at that time that we were looking, and that the provider and estate was looking at the Jericho, the Hampton Inn. And at that time, it was a thought. It wasn't, there was nothing formal about it. So, but I did mention it to Hank, and I told him I would let him know and keep him posted if the project developed. But then what happens is, somewhere, February, everybody's life goes up in the air with COVID. And at that time, really at the department, this project went on a back burner because we really had to turn our attention to providing emergency services to people in the community. Our food stamp applications quadrupled, our applications for temporary assistance. We had people on the verge of eviction. So we really spent much of February through at least June really kind of full on looking at what folks in the county need in terms of emergency services. The other thing we had to develop really quickly was an isolation site, because we had homeless folks that were affected by COVID, and what to do there, right? They couldn't no longer stay in a shelter because you didn't want to pass on any infection. So we feverishly, and really I have to give credit to my deputy commissioner, who really put a plan together very quickly with that included the federally qualified health centers to develop a location where we were able to at least place people who were struggling with the illness. So that was really, for months, that was the focus. The Jericho project was way on the back burner. And then it came to life again when I had heard from CHR that the developer was nearing closing on the property, because I didn't know at that point whether the developer even had the property anymore or was going to buy it. We were really not in touch for months and months. Yes, yeah. So Charlie let us know that the developer was going to purchase the property and that he was near a closing date. And I believe that closing then eventually happened the beginning of July, somewhere around the 8th or 9th. The 12th was the final. So it was the beginning of July. And then I had another conversation at that time with the school superintendent who checked in and said, "Hey, Nancy, what's going on?" And I said, "Yeah, I think this project I heard the developer closed on the building." And he said, "Well, do you anticipate any additional children coming into the district?" So what we did is Lorraine and her staff, they surveyed all of the families. It was about 104 families that potentially were in motels that could have been placed if the Jericho project came to be. They could have been placed there, and we tried to get a sense of who would be transferring their children, if anything, to Jericho. And what we found is that, not surprisingly, the majority of parents chose to keep their children in the district of origin because that's at least consistency for kids that are homeless. And a total of 19 children. There were about, 6 families, I think, or 7 families? There were a handful of families who said, "Oh, yes, if we get moved, then we would move our kids and put our kids in Jericho." Now, I'm sure you all know, or maybe you don't, about the McKinney-Vento Act. It's a federal legislation that allows for homeless parents to decide where they want to put their children. Children have the right to go back to their school district of origin, and that district has to bus them if need be. Parents also have a right to put their children in the new school district of wherever they're placed. So out of these 104 families, there was a small handful of families who said, yes, we would put our children in Jericho. And so we had a total of 19 children that potentially would be going to the Jericho School District. And I shared that information with the superintendent. We were able to give him the grades of all 19 children, and that's where we left it. So the other thing you should note, any of the children who potentially would go into the Jericho School District does not pay for those children. Under the McKinney-Vento Act, the school district of origin must reimburse the Jericho School District. And it says right here, I'm quoting from it, anytime a student is temporarily placed into a new district, the, quote, home district or, quote, district of origin remains financially responsible for the student's education and transportation to school. The stacked form, which gets completed, is sent to the state ed department, which requests that the home district reimburse the district that the child is placed in for any cost. So it would be at no cost. You should also know that once the family were to move out of the school district, so if we had put them in the Hampton Inn and they moved out now to permanent housing and say they relocated to another area in Nassau County, unless that child is a senior in high school, those children have to go to the school district that they've relocated to. They cannot remain in Jericho and live somewhere else. And that is also part of the federal legislation. So the only exception to that is if you have a child that's graduating. So if a child is in 11th grade and they have one more year to go, the state says that child can finish their schooling, say in the Jericho, school district. But any other children, they have to go to the new home district. So, so Hank was aware of that. He knows the federal legislation just like I do. And so that's what we discussed in July about these 19 children and what their grades would be, because we knew specifically the grades.
Was in the beginning of July?
It was probably mid-July. It was after I found out that the developer bought the building and had actually closed on the building because, you know, as I mentioned before, we really were not focused on the project for months because we were really focused on providing emergency services to the county and to make sure we had an isolation site for homeless folks that were sick or exposed.
And what about the town of Oyster Bay?
What about them?
Do you notify the town? Like, is there
No.
any permits you have to follow, any codes that you, or are you just allowed to do whatever?
No, we did not, but you know, Chairman Walker, it is no different than all of these shelters that we have, the 44 shelters that we have in all of the other communities. We did not do anything different with respect to this project than we did with all of these folks. And with all of these projects that, I don't know if you guys have received this list, but if you peruse the list, we're talking Roosevelt, Hempstead, Uniondale, Freeport. Those folks were never reached out to. We did nothing any different here with Jericho, with the town of Oyster Bay. The other thing is, and if I could just add on, we are also bound by confidentiality law. Could you just go over that for a minute, Rudy?
Very briefly, the records at DSS are New York State records. They are the proprietary interest of the state of New York. We act as their instrumentality in this state. Those records are governed by confidentiality, specifically Social Services Law Section 136, which prohibits any communication or disclosure of this information other than specified cases. So it's if you were to call us and say, is a person a recipient? Is a person located in, we are not able to tell you that unless it falls within a specific, a criminal act that's, being investigated, things of that nature. So it's a very strict mandate that we're under in terms of what governs the kind of information that we can release or that we can provide. And that you need to be aware of that, and it's an unfortunate mandate. I understand your concern, but we're governed by the state regarding that issue.
I'm really concerned more for the safety of those families now that are going to be living there. Is everything up to code in that? I mean, it wasn't a homeless shelter before. Yeah. It wasn't housing families that are going to be staying for a longer period of time. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Is it going to be kitchen facilities for them? If it's kind of a lot of wraparound services, daycare. I mean, they didn't have daycare in a hotel before, in the Hampton Inn before. You want to make sure that wherever we're housing these families, they have enough troubles that they have to deal with. You want to make sure where they are that everything is right for them, that we're not putting them in some place that is detrimental to them because they don't have the proper, things that they're supposed to have, which I wouldn't even know all those things.
Sure.
Normally you would do that, like I said, even in a home or whatever, that you make sure that everything is up to code, that they have all the right things. The fire marshals have been notified. Is this right? I mean, I'm going to tell you an example, something that they had reached out to me. The chief of the Jericho Fire Department had gone over because he was very concerned, saw some work or whatever, and they were very reluctant to even let him look around or whatever, and which finally I guess somebody said, well, I'll take you a little bit, walk through, whatever, which he did. And a few days later, or a week later, or whenever it was, they actually had a fire call, because the automatic alarms went off. So he went over there, and they didn't want to even let him in. And they said, look, now it's our worry. We're the fire department. We have to make sure it's safe where you are. And so he was able to see more. It said there was a pool, an indoor pool there that was emptied, obviously, but it was just filled with junk that they just threw in there. Now, I would certainly assume it's not going to be left like that. But those are all the things, like I said, wherever we're putting families. I mean, God bless them. I hate to see that they're in a motel room anywhere. But, you know, if the facility is going to be done and going to be so much better for them, we have to make sure that facility is what it should be, and that it's safe for them, and it's you know, it's not their permanent home yet, but it's as much of a permanent home that we can make for them with all those wraparound services, and make sure everything is done properly. Who's checking on that? You know,
Okay.
who is?
Yep.
I mean, the state is okaying, this building, but obviously the building's not even ready yet, so the state doesn't know and the state,
But-
what might be fine in some part of the state isn't fine here, you know?
Yep. So all of your concerns are correct. I mean, we want to always make sure. But the thing about it is we're not the people, the department doesn't get involved in zoning and codes. That's the state jobs, the state's job. They're the ones, for any facility in New York State, they have to inspect the building. They have to decide whether it meets whatever building codes, zoning codes. That's not us. And in fact, we just received a notification from the state. They apparently did go down and they looked at the building. They did a walkthrough, and we received a letter dated yesterday that they are ready to pre-certify that facility. So I guess, and I can't speak for them, but I am going to assume that based on this letter that we received, when they conducted their walkthrough, they felt that that facility, physical plant, met whatever regulations they have for shelters. And that's found in the Part 900 regulations. Yes.
Can you hear me? Hi. So I just want you to know a little bit more about the process. We have to send up security plans, operational plans, budgets, and we are the pass-through. So I see, and Doug and I see these all going up and down and up and down. They go back and forth over and over with OTDA. There are things that I want to see. My goal in any shelter is people are well fed, they have access to nutritional food that for dietary, if you're diabetic, those are things, safety, I'm very clear on, and permanent housing opportunities. But the regs for these shelters, they go on for pages, and OTDA will send a letter back. There'll be like 55 points that they're unhappy with, and this is what it takes to come to certification. They're very stringent on these regulations.
And this process is going to now happen for all 44 shelters that we have in Nassau County, because by 2023, every single shelter needs to be certified by OTDA. So this very rigorous process is going to be happening over the next couple of years, and we know some of our current providers are going to do well, and some of them are not. They may not be able to meet the rigorous standards.
One more thing?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just one more thing on the building. This building operated as a hotel, so it's a fantastic site for the families to be at. So it was already so many steps ahead because of the use of the building before it was considered for this purpose, as opposed to some of the residential type shelters that we have where people are quite crowded. There's recreation for the children. There's so many, there's an after-school program, there will be tutoring for the children, so, and there's space in there for all of these services to be administered comfortably for the families.
Doug Russell again. I would just like to add to your comment about the pool, is that the plan is to fill that pool in, and that's going to become a daycare center.
Not fill it in with water. You mean end the pool?
No,
Let's hope not. No.
Yeah.
They're
that's
gonna
not going
fill
to be
it-
a big sandbox.
I do have other questions, but I'm going to let the rest of our committee ask their questions. Anyone want to go? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of preliminary questions. So if if all of the homeless shelters in Nassau County are going to be required to be licensed and approved by the state OTDA in 2023, why did CHI have to go through the process now?
Because that's the process that's currently in play. So for any new facility starting January of this year through January of 2023, this is the process.
That's a county stipulation.
No, it's a state. No,
So-
it's
so
not
even
our,
though-
it's not our rules. It's the state's rules. This is state mandate. It's not ours.
But it doesn't go into effect until 2023, I thought you said.
No, by 2023, everyone has to be up to the standard.
Oh, I
It's
got you.
in effect
Okay.
currently.
Thank you, I was a little bit confused. Okay, so, obviously, we know that the county doesn't select the site here. And when it comes to providing homeless shelters or shelters for homeless families, the county is always approached by the provider, is that correct?
That's correct.
So the county never goes out and seeks a location?
No, we do not.
Okay. And when you do enter into these relationships with the providers, is there always an MOU in place?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And in this particular case, because you've been involved with CHI in the two other locations in Hempstead and Uniondale that was set forth in the MOU from 2017, according to that MOU, to allow for the facility in Jericho only needed a letter of consent, which is more or less an amendment to the MOU. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And have you had any issues or problems with CHI over the past 3 years at the Uniondale and Hempstead locations?
Well, they've been with the county for 12 years.
I'm sorry?
They've been with the county for 12 years. They've been operating shelters. To my knowledge, in my time that I've been here, absolutely nothing has been brought to my attention. Doug has been here the longest.
I'm sorry. In the time that I've been at DSS, CHI has always been considered to be one of our premier providers, operators of homeless shelters. This doesn't mean that sometimes bad things don't happen in shelters, and they may have happened at this shelter. The state requires a serious incident report. I can't tell you off the top of my head whether or not there's been any at CHI's facilities, but if there had been, they would report that. But generally, we look at them as being one of the best providers that we have.
Approximately how many shelters have they provided in Nassau County over the past?
Well, they have three family shelters right now. One of them we're converting over to a singles shelter.
The other thing, just to add to that, legislator, is they operate 39 locations in Suffolk County, and they also did a similar conversion, like I had mentioned earlier, in Comac. And I've certainly been in touch with the commissioner, my partner in Suffolk County, and they're held in very high regard there as well.
The facility in Jericho, it is not requiring any construction, correct?
To our knowledge, no, but again, that would be the developer's decision with Tri.
Right, okay. And the cost that you indicated, Commissioner, the average of $225 a night, which is set by the state of New York, correct?
Yes, Tri put together a budget laying out their personnel costs and other costs, and then the state finally approved that as the daily rate.
And that comes out to that approximately $40,000 for a 6-month stay.
For a family of four.
$60,000 for a 9-month stay versus the $104,000 for approximately a 2-year stay that the county incurs now at the motels where they're getting no services.
That's correct.
Okay. And that $40,000 or $60,000 that is paid by the county is 100% reimbursed by the state of New York.
For the most part, it's 100% reimbursable. If there are TANF families that have hit their 5-year mark, then we share some of that cost. We share a percentage of that cost. But for the most part, it is reimbursable.
And any amount that is spent by DSS, whether you're reimbursed or not, in any services that you provide, that number is already factored into your annual budget, correct?
That's correct.
So it's allocated already in advance, and every year you have to you submit your budget for that year.
That's correct.
Okay. I had a question for the county attorney, Mr. Carminati. You spoke about confidentiality, how the county was required to maintain confidentiality. With
I'm
this
sorry,
part.
sir, the department must maintain
Sorry?
confidentiality. It's not to the county, it's the department must maintain confidentiality because it is an instrument of the state dealing with state records and mandate.
Okay, but yet, the commissioner advised the school superintendent about this project. Is that not a breach of the confidentiality?
Well, I'm not here to judge that aspect.
It's not a matter of judgment,
If
sir.
I may, sir, it's not a matter of my judging it, but what I'm trying to say is, it was my understanding of it. It was an offhand comment made initially, I believe in January, that for a project that at that time was dormant, it did not exist. Subsequent to that, there was a subsequent meeting where, out of a concern for the children, for the clients, the matter was addressed. No names were revealed that I'm aware of. No identifying information was provided. Merely statistical information was garnered to assist the superintendent regarding an impact that may or may not occur in that school district.
Sir, I have no problem, I have no issue with the commissioner making those comments. I only raise it because you made a point of talking about confidentiality.
So the question,
So if the confidentiality doesn't apply to that situation,
sir, again, I'm not here to adjudicate that particular point. What I am trying to say is how this happened. I wasn't there. Had I been there, I would have advised the commissioner differently.
okay.
But I cannot now second-guess the commissioner or say it didn't happen or it shouldn't have happened. I'm not here to chastise anyone. What I am here to say
only
is,
asked you if there was a violation of the...
and I'm not here in a position to adjudicate that, what I can say in all fairness and to answer your question directly and honestly is that had I been present, I would have advised the commissioner not to have made that comment, but that's hindsight, second guessing, and I'm not going to engage in that.